What's up, guys? Your agent Tyler Wayrung here, and today I'm going to be talking about the 5 most common issues I see when real estate investors try to use a HELOC to go out and buy either their first, their next, or their nth rental property, investment property, etc. So we all know how powerful the HELOC can be to fund your ventures, get you started, give you that seed capital to get the ball rolling. But if you don't do this correctly, you can end up in a world of hurt, and I see that all too often, and I'm always here to try to help you out. But in today's video, I'm going to hopefully educate you on the front side of that so you can know this going in before you actually make that HELOC investment and get yourself in trouble. So without further ado, let's jump into number 1. And the first big mistake that I see a lot of people make when investing in properties using their HELOC is underestimating the rehab. Okay, so most of the time when you're using a HELOC to buy a property that has some issue with it, right? It's not just a turnkey rental, or else, what's the point of using a HELOC, or likely what's the point of even buying that property? You usually need some way to add value to that, and you do that via a rehab. And so I see a lot of people, especially if it's your first time trying to estimate a rehab, they significantly underestimate what that's going to be, or they get good estimates from contractors to just do the work, and they miss out on all the other ancillary expenses that you have when you are going through a rehab. These are things like utilities, and probably the most common one that I see people leave out of their expenses is the demo or the trash out. Usually everyone assumes that I come in and I get to work, these guys are going to get to work and get this all put back together for me, but oftentimes you have to get all the crap out of there first before you can even start, whether that's full of trash, whether you bought a hoarder house, or even if there's nothing in there, but you still have to do a demo. You have to demo out some walls, demo a bathroom, get all the junk out of your way so you can start putting that back in new. Usually this is anywhere from $2 to $3 grand up to $5, $6, and $7 grand on some of these bigger properties where you have to do that. So if your numbers are tight, this can definitely pinch you there. Moving on to number 2, the second biggest mistake I see people make when investing with a HELOC specifically is over-rehabbing their property. They feel like they have this new money out there. They got all this money to go spend, so they want to put in the nicest stuff. This is often most common when people are doing their first property because they've been watching HGTV their whole life. They see all these before and after photos of other investors out there doing this, and they want their project to be right in the mix. They want it to be just as beautiful, so they overdo it. They spend way too much to make their property I won't say unsaleable, but sell at a point where it's like, is it really worth all that time and effort that you put into rehabbing this thing if you're only going to make a couple grand, or if at worst you're breaking even or losing money, and then you still have to come out of pocket to pay that rehab, or to pay that HELOC back rather? It's just not in a good position. So know your plan going in, know what comparable properties are selling for, and what finishes those properties have. Okay, so if you know 5 houses in this neighborhood sold for the price that you want to sell for, and they all have laminate countertops and basic flooring, that's all you need to do. You don't need to go granite or quartz or do these beautiful, elegant backsplashes and things like that. You just need to match your comps, make a very clean property, and have the work be of high quality. Those are the things that often first-time home buyers are looking for. Just everything's functional, it's clean, it's operational. It doesn't have to be fancy into the nines if that's not what your comparable sales are telling you. Now, if you go into a nice neighborhood and everybody else has granite, you better be underwriting your property to put granite in those kitchens, etc. So keep an eye on your comps and do not over-rehab the property. At the end of the day, no one cares how beautiful it was. It matters that you actually made money and didn't get yourself in a mess. All right, number 3 happens most often on people's first deal using a HELOC. So you have this HELOC, you go out and you start spending all this money, like you're buying all this stuff up, man, you feel like a king because you're just writing checks left and right. Things getting done, work's cranking out, the property's coming together, it's looking great. However, you didn't anticipate these monthly HELOC interest payments. That can add up quickly. They are a high variable rate, so anytime you're in a higher interest rate environment, and once you get towards the end of a project, you probably got 50, 60, 70, maybe even 100 grand racked up on this HELOC, your payment's going to be pretty significant. You may be knocking on a couple $1,000s every month that you got to come out of pocket, and you do not want to miss these payments because your credit score will go in shambles, and they'll probably rip your HELOC away from you once you do get that paid back off. So go into it knowing what this HELOC monthly payment's going to be when you start to put all these expenses on there. I tell people, whatever your total rehab is or your total HELOC that you expect to be out of pocket, expect to start paying that in month one and run all of your numbers as if you're going to have to make that high monthly payment right out of the gate. You won't have to, but that'll put you in a conservative position to when you start to get there, you'll be like, oh, okay, I was kind of expecting this all along. No big deal. I'll be able to make that payment, but you don't want to get yourself in a position where you're tight and you have to make a move because you don't really have another option. All right, moving on to number 4. This is probably my biggest pet peeve when it comes to people buying properties with a HELOC, is when you don't have a plan on how you're going to make that HELOC get paid back off. Okay? It's so exciting to get the HELOC and go out and find your first deal, buy it, and then everybody thinks you're done there. Whether you're going to rehab it, whatever, a HELOC is not a long-term debt instrument. It should be used for short-term, opportunistic plays that you can go out and take advantage of having this, because essentially it's like having the cash. So if you need to use it to buy a property, to use it to, tie it up, write a cash offer, get a good deal. If you need to quickly rehab a property, and then you better be having a good exit plan, whether you're going to refinance or flip it. But these people who go out and buy rental property with a HELOC and think the cash flow is going to pay it back off over the next 10 years, that is not a good play. You can likely get a long-term fixed interest rate loan on a rental property for much cheaper than you're going to be paying on a monthly basis for an interest-only variable rate HELOC, which in most cases that's what you're going to be getting. Try to get a loan for its intended use. Get a rental property loan, put on a rental property. As a general rule, just don't ever use a HELOC for anything that you think is going to be over 6 months, 6 to 12 months that you need to have this money out, okay? That's a good rule of thumb. There may be some exceptions out there, but I do not recommend anything longer than 6 months. If you have to go out to 12, I'll give you a break there, but don't have a long-term plan to use a HELOC for rental property. All right, and moving on to the 5th, and this mistake, it just hurts my soul when I see you guys go out there and do this, okay? And this is when the property doesn't cash flow after you just did all this work. All right, so this hurts the most because even if you nail everything up to this point and you get to the final end and then the whole plan falls apart, it makes me sad. But guys, this is when you buy a property, use a HELOC. You go out and either you buy it for cash, you get a good deal on it, or you buy it another way and use your HELOC to renovate the property. You do all this right. You don't make any other mistake of 1 through 4. You nailed your estimate. You didn't over-rehab it. You got everything dialed in. You had a plan to get it paid back off. I'm going to cash out refinance this, okay? This is the BRRRR model. This is where everybody messes up the BRRRR model. Okay, I'm going to use my HELOC. It's going to be under 6 months. I'm going to cash out refinance, take those funds to pay my HELOC back off, and then I'll be sitting with long-term fixed interest rate debt on a rental property. Boom. You nailed it. Except for one thing. You forgot to make sure when you cash out, refinance that this property is actually going to cash flow. If you have to take so much out on your refinance to pay your HELOC back that you're losing money on this rental every month, what the hell did we just do all this work for? You know what I mean? It gets me so frustrated because we lose sight of the why. You started this whole endeavor because you wanted to buy a cash flowing rental property. But then at the end of the day, you did all this work, you made this property really pretty, and it didn't cash flow. Okay, so what do you do here? How do you fix this? You have to run these numbers before you go in. If your goal is to BRRRR this out and to leave this deal with a rental property, you have to consider your post cash out refinance cash flow. So what does that mean? That's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Basically, assume you're buying a rental property. Assuming you're buying this property as a rental, and whatever value you need to cash out refinance this at, run a deal calculator as if that is your purchase price and say, okay, if I were to pay $150 for this and the rents are $1,200, does this property cash flow? No? Okay, well then I can't go all in. I can't go spend as much money as I need to on my HELOC to where I have to cash out $150 to pay that off. To do so, I can only spend $20,000. I can only cash out refinance maybe $120 to get a $1,200 a month property to cash flow. You have to work backwards. Start with the end and know, okay, all in, I have to be at this amount to get this property to cash flow. So now I have to back into, well, I know it needs 30 grand. So, okay, if I need it to be at 120 grand all in, and I know this property needs 30 grand worth of rehab. Okay, now I'm at 90 grand. Okay, what are closing costs going to be? Probably, 5 to 7,000. Okay, now my offer needs to be, somewhere back in here, right? You go backwards, you backtrack all the way into what you can offer, and you don't go over that. Don't let your emotions get involved. Most people nail this right out of the gate. They come in, oh, I can only offer you 82 grand for this because I did all my homework, I backed in, and I know it's going to cash flow on the backside. And then they get a counter offer. I know we're at 110. We'll counter you at 87. Oh man, they came down a lot of money, man. We're really close. We're only 8 grand off here. Nope, you messed up because now you're going to come up because you got your emotions involved. You're like, oh, it's only 7 or 8 grand. No, but it throws the whole thing off on the background. It's a chain reaction that's going to get all your numbers all the way off. So do your homework, stick to your numbers. If you're going to plan on counter offering and things like that, then know what your max allowable offer is, your MAO, and don't start with that. If your max allowable offer on this thing is 82, make your first offer at 75. And then when they counter at 87, you go, oh, I'll go up to 80. And you kind of just, you narrow your way back into that. But do not go over your max allowable offer because that'll get you in a position where at the end of the day, you do all this work and you have a negative cash flow property. You just wasted a ton of time. If the numbers don't make sense for a BRRRR, which they are actually very hard to find, so don't get discouraged. They're really hard, especially in a high interest rate environment that we're in right now. You could do this stuff back in 2020 a lot easier when rates were 3 or 4%, but they're not there right now. Okay, they may be going back, but who knows? But just have multiple exit strategies. If the numbers don't work for a BRRRR, run them as a flip. Can you flip this thing? You're going to do all the same work, but instead of cash out refinancing, you just slap it on the MLS, and then you're out of this deal. You pay the HELOC back off, and instead of having that equity cushion that you have on a rental, you put that in your pocket, and you move on to the next deal. Or you use that for a down payment on another rental property. That's how you can ultimately get your rental property, and that's how I recommend you do it. But with that, guys, I hope you got value out of these 5 tips. If you want to know exactly how to use the HELOC the smart way, I spent a lot of time putting that all into my book that you can get on Amazon, The Ultimate Guide to Using and Investing with the HELOC, so you don't make any of these mistakes or lots of other strategies and everything I know about HELOCs with investing. I put it all into this book for you for a very cheap price on Amazon. So go check it out if you want to learn more. But with that, guys, if you got value, drop your comments below, share it with somebody else who might help, and we'll catch you next time.